Hi, my name is Rachael Lowe. I'm from Physiopedia. Today I am interviewing Professor Jane Burridge. Jane is the president of the Association of Chartered Physiotherapists interested in neurology in the UK and also a researcher at Southampton University. Her work is in technologies in stroke rehabilitation, and also she shares some really good tips for people, therapists working with individuals with stroke. So enjoy this interview, and over to Jane.
So I'm actually professor of restorative neuroscience. So I'm primarily interested in recovery of the brain following injury or disease, and most of my work's in stroke. Although I do some work with traumatic brain injury and a little bit of work with MS and also with spinal cord injury. Um, and if I had to sort of capture what my research is about, it is really to do with designing technologies to support recovery, which are built on our understanding of neuroplasticity. So, over the last 10, 20 years, our understanding of brain recovery has advanced such a lot, and we can capitalize on that in our therapy. And so, by using technologies, we can design a technology which is going to optimize recovery. And that's kind of my mission, if you like. So it's one side of me is technology, one side of me is neuroscience.
Excellent. Well, it's a good two things to put together, isn't it?
Yes.
And how long have you been researching in that sort of in with technologies in relation to rehabilitation?
Okay, well, in fact, if you go back to when I did my PhD, that was actually doing developing and doing a clinical trial with a drop foot stimulator. So that was really where I began with technologies, and why that appealed to me was that I could see how using electrical stimulation to provide a more normal gait actually complemented what I knew as a physiotherapist, that it was important to develop normal movement patterns following stroke. So this was this is a technology which actually complemented what I believed in as a physiotherapist. So that was when I began, when I started with my PhD. And I finished my PhD in 1999. So I suppose I started in probably about 1995, something like that.
So it's an early adoption of technologies in with neurological patients in neurological rehabilitation. Where are you at now, and what are you finding with your research in where we as clinicians can use technology? So kind of like how are we going to implement the technology into clinical practice as from the research?
Okay, so first of all, I think it's important to say that we did a clinical trial then with the drop foot stimulator, and we published that in about 2000. And it's now 2017. So it's taken, and it's now just beginning to be used as a sort of routine clinical practice. But it took 10, 15 years to go from actually having some evidence that this worked to actually patients routinely being able to benefit from it. So I think that is one of the big problems of changing practice. It's such a slow process. But I think it also represents the way we as a profession have changed. That 15 years ago, I met a lot of resistance from therapists to using technologies. And the study that we did was called ATRAS, an NIHR study, where we looked at the views of therapists and the patients to technologies for upper limb rehabilitation. We discovered then that very few therapists use technologies. A lot of them are very skeptical about them. There was really quite a negative feeling about them. And I think that has changed quite dramatically over the last few years, so that now therapists are quite hungry to use technologies and can see how they can complement their conventional therapy and feel much less threatened by them. I think there was a feeling 10 years ago that technologies were going to sort of march forward and conventional therapy was going to be out the window and we weren't going to be appreciated. People said, the way I handle my patient, this one-to-one contact is really important, and we're fearful of losing that. And I think we've now come to realise that actually technologies aren't going to do that. In some ways, they might give us more time to do that. So I think that's how I've seen it change. But the other thing I think which has influenced my work now is that the change in stroke, particularly in the stroke rehabilitation pathway, that patients' early supported discharge, certainly in the UK, is the standard practice, so that a patient is discharged from hospital as soon as they are safe to go home, which means that their rehab goes on in their own home. So if their rehab's going on in their own home, then the technologies have got to be something that they can use at home. So it needs to be simple, low cost, easy to use things that might be very smart, but are not too expensive and are not too complex, really. So I think that my work has changed because I have to, no point in me doing lots of fantastic research in something which is never actually going to be adopted by the NHS because it's they can't afford it or it doesn't fit in with the stroke care pathway. So I think that's how it's changed because of the environment that's changed.
Yeah, so several ways that it's changed, really, and I think like you say, the environment's changed where we're using the technologies, and also, like you said, I think we are less threatened by technology because we use it every day now, don't we? Yeah. So with individuals with stroke going early discharge, going home earlier and having their rehabilitation at home, what technologies are you being seen to be used in the home now that people are using, and what about what's coming in the future?
Okay, well, two of the things that I'm working on at the moment. The first is using the internet.
Yeah.
So this is a program where the study that we did, it was used in conjunction with constraint-induced movement therapy, so that the patient was supported by this web-based program to use to use the MIT and to do exercises, to do activities. And the idea behind it was that they would set their goals for the day, they set their targets, they would choose what they were going to do. They would then be able to either print it out or send it as a text message to their phone. They'd be able to see what they were doing. Then they would report back in the evening of what they had done, and they would be able to see, this is what I said I would do, this is what I've actually done, and get encouragement from the programme, so that if they weren't meeting their targets, it would give them some advice on what to do and so on. And all that information, which is up in the cloud, was accessible by their therapist. So the therapist could monitor what the patient was doing remotely. The patients could give permission to family members or maybe other patients, other people who'd had a stroke to have a look at it as well, and they could do it together, that sort of thing. So that's something that all you need is a mobile phone to do it on.
So is that available for therapists to use anywhere?
Yeah.
What's that called then? Where can people access that?
Called LifeCit, LIFECIT, and that's actually on, if you Google that, you can find it, and anybody can use it. It's protected by putting in a username and password. So, and there are some therapists who are using it.
Oh, that sounds great. We will share that, and people can have a look at using that. So that's good.
Yeah, we were very disappointed. We put in a bid to do a big trial with it. Actually, just developing it a bit further and doing a big trial. We nearly got the money, and then we just heard a few weeks ago we didn't get the money. So that's really sad, because we think that it's a very economical way of supporting home-based therapy. But never mind, we'll try again.
And it's really important for for continuous rehabilitation, isn't it? Because you don't get to see the therapist every day when you're at home, even in the hospital. So
yeah. And then the other thing that we're doing is we've developed a garment
Mm-hmm.
Mark is a T-shirt which has got integrated sensors in it that monitor movement and muscle activity, not with EMGs, but with things called mechanomyograms that don't need electrical contact. So this is a T-shirt, and the therapist sets it up with the patient and prescribes a range of exercises, activities, functional activities to do, and how they're going to do them. The patient then on a tablet gets this program for them to practice, tells them how many repetitions they're going to do and how they're going to do it. They see a video of how they should do it. They perform the movements, and then they see an avatar. This might be sort of simple, like picking up a cup and drinking, or polishing a table, or pouring, or brushing their hair, that sort of thing. And they do these, and then when they've done it, they on their tablet they see an avatar moving as they moved, so they can see whether they moved in a normal way or not. So, for instance, might see the avatar moving their trunk forward, or when they're moving their arm, taking their arm out to the side, and it might give them some hints on how to improve it. So that's called MMark. And we're just over halfway through that study. It's about to be CE marked, and we're doing a small feasibility study with it in a month or two's time.
Excellent. And is that showing some good results with that work?
That's going to be, sorry?
Is that showing some good results?
Well, we haven't got the good results yet because we haven't done the feasibility study.
Okay.
But we've demonstrated that it's valid and that it's reliable, it provides reliable data. We've developed a really nice, simple graphical user interface, and the algorithms for taking the data and turning them into useful measures, as well as the visuals, to provide the feedback. So that's been a really exciting project.
Those both sound really, really interesting.
Yeah.
And I really like the concept that there is an opportunity to use technology for more regular therapy at home, or independent rehabilitation at home.
And to support self-management, really. I mean, that's behind it all the time, is to put the patient in charge and take responsibility, and sort of drive their own rehab, so that they're in control, really, with the support and the guidance from a therapist, but not the therapist taking over.
Yeah. And that control and the sort of independent taking responsibility for their own health is really important, isn't it, in when an individual with stroke gets discharged home? They don't want to become reliant on their therapist or on the rehab services.
Yeah. And I think it's something which is not just in physiotherapy or in stroke rehab. I think it's something we see across the board. Is I think in the past, if you go back to the 18th century, people's health improved when public health improved. So we began to have drains, we didn't have open sewers and things like that. Then that people's health improved then. And then I think during the 20th century, things like antibiotics and so on, and medical treatments improved people's health. Whereas I think the 21st century, we're going to see people's health improving because of the self-management, of actually taking better care of yourself, to living a healthier lifestyle. And I think that's going to be the thing which enables people to be fitter and live for longer and make better recovery.
So, as physiotherapists, how can we facilitate that process? What would your advice be to clinicians to facilitate that, encouraging people to take responsibility for their own health and their rehabilitation?
Well, I think obviously I think that using technologies to enable people to do things without having a physiotherapist there.
Yeah. What about if they don't have access to technology?
Well, I think to lobby to make sure they do have access to technology. But I think it's actually, in some ways, it comes down to an attitude, really, of listening to patients, and understanding. We will talk about it, but the holistic approach of treating the whole patient, and you know, two patients may have the same pathology, they may have the same impairment, that sort of thing, but what one patient needs is very different from what another patient needs, and the patient probably knows best what they need because they know what they want to be able to do. So I think it's sort of taking a supporting and maybe more of a teacher role than a sort of the medical model, really, sort of, thinking of it as an educator.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think it's an attitude as much as anything.
Yeah, and it is something that we can learn. We need to learn to do that as well. So, and now I'm really aware of your time. I want to ask you what, thinking of stroke rehabilitation in the sort of general broad term, do you have any top tips or practical advice that you can share with clinicians all over the world to help them better work with individuals with stroke, to help them optimise their recovery?
Well,
apart from using technology, which I know you'd like to say.
Slightly different question. And I think that one of the most important ways in which we will improve globally stroke rehabilitation is actually to communicate with each other.
Yeah.
So I think sharing best practice, sharing experience is very important. Not working in isolation, but copying what other people do, working with other people, sharing your experiences. So I think that's probably one of the most important things, ways in which we will improve. And being critical of evidence, questioning what we do. And obviously there are always going to be lots of things we do that there isn't any evidence for. And we don't want to we can't shut that away. Just because there isn't any evidence for it doesn't mean to say it doesn't work. But I think we need to be much more aware of what evidence there is for treatment that we do. And when there is some evidence, to be willing to adopt it, to willing to change.
Yeah. They're very good. I like both of those pieces of advice. And I think that they are pieces of advice that any physiotherapist can adopt, which is really good. What about for individuals who would like, and I'm drawing on your general broad experience here, and I'm landing these questions on you unprepared. So what about your advice to clinicians who are early career clinicians who would like to get involved in stroke rehabilitation, or what sort of clinical skills should they focus on developing to become good therapists to work with individuals with stroke? One you've already mentioned, and that's listening and educating, I think. So listening to patients and then taking on a role as an educator, which is a good skill. But are there any others that sort of spring to mind?
Thinking of my own, when I was a young physiotherapist, I think having a good mentor, somebody who you respect and who respects you, and who you can learn from, who you can be quite open with about the difficulties you're having, and take advice from. So I think learning from somebody who you respect as a mentor is very important.
Yeah, good advice. Very good advice. I think, and it's it is the way that we learn, isn't it? Learning from other people, sharing practice. You've already mentioned all of these things, and it's important for us to do that as a profession. And it doesn't have to be, mentors don't have to be just local. You can have mentors all over the world. So for people who are in countries where there are less resources, then now with technology, which I know you'll like, you can reach out across the world and find mentors as well, which is lovely. So I know we're nearly out of time, but is there anything else that you would like to share with physiotherapists across the world about any of your work, any sort of missions that you're on that you would like to share with everybody?
I think really what I would almost like sort of to turn it around completely is that don't actually have confidence in the importance of physiotherapy in terms of the way that your hands-on therapy, that you can achieve so much with that. And thinking of the mentor actually that I remember when I was first started in stroke rehab, actually watching somebody who was a skilled therapist handle a patient and working with a patient and seeing just what they could achieve with that patient, simply by words of encouragement, by the way they handled that patient, why they supported that patient. And so, although all my work is to do with technologies, I think the last thing I would say is that is really, really important. And that's something that's very difficult to measure.
Yeah.
But doesn't mean to say that it isn't really important. And so don't throw that away.
Yeah.
Don't,
Really good advice. I like it. Jane, thank you very much. Where can people find out more about you and your work if they want?
If they Google me,
Okay.
just Google Jane Burridge, then you'll come up with my university website, and then you can communicate with me through that, and you can see about the work that we're doing on my website in the university.
Perfect. Jane, thank you so much for your time today. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you. Some great tips for everybody. Thank you very much.
Okay, it's been a pleasure. Thank you.